All right. Well, welcome to the podcast. We have a new box of zingers.
We
today.
do. You got to read what it says on the box, though.
Yeah. So we still got a few of the vanilla zingers, the iced vanilla from
Which
last
are awesome.
week, and then Julie gave us the gin zingers.
Gin zingers. She said that in the podcast last week.
It was an announcement Sunday. I was talking about the Gen Z missions lunch on Sunday.
Gen
and I said
Zers.
for all of our Gen Zers.
Yeah.
So we got the Gen
The
Zingers.
Gen Zingers.
Let me see that box.
So raspberry. So now we got vanilla and raspberry.
So it's already open.
Well,
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
How about that gift?
Look, you cannot give me a box of zingers
Really?
on the way to. Well, I mean,
This is a gift from Julie.
I know for
Julie,
us,
he messed up your
for
gift.
us, and I'm a part of us.
No,
The
this
10
is for
pack is
Cameron
now
and
an
I.
8 pack. It's crazy.
Yeah, I told Cameron. I said you have 8 zingers instead of 10,
Here you go, Cameron.
so I won't need to eat any.
Nope.
First time with a
Because I've already
raspberry
had 2.
zinger.
No, you don't need any.
I never
Are
went
you
back
sure
and
that's
looked.
all you had?
Yeah, I only had 2. Yeah. Raspberries are awesome. I'll tell you the best. Well, they're all good, but there's the flavor, like there's an orange cake flavor that is so, man, it's so good. Like those are my favorite. I'm not a fan of the chocolate, but
Would you like one?
no,
You've
I've had
already
2, dude.
yeah.
I've had 2. I'm good. All day long. My food today is consisted of a cup of coffee and 2 zingers.
That's probably not good, but that's okay.
It'll last me.
So
till
note
dinner.
to self, never send a sweet treat with Jeff to deliver
Well,
to anyone on our
no,
behalf.
I would say don't ever send a box of zingers with me that it's not going to get and think it's not going to get open.
It won't
'cause it's
make
gonna
it.
get open.
Or if you do, maybe include a sandwich.
No, I would rather have a zinger.
Here
So
goes.
go
raspberry.
ahead. Yeah, it's so good.
What do you think?
That's not too shabby.
Yeah.
You made
The
a
old raspberry
you made a
zinger.
comment before you like bit into it. Was
It's
that
just so pretty.
was that
simultaneously.
anticipatory?
It's just so pretty.
It was
I don't
like,
taste raspberry though.
mm,
Well, it is sweet and it is mine.
no doubt. You knew it was going to be good.
By the way, the speaking of Julie, the Thanksgiving videos have been great.
She was the star.
Yeah.
She really is.
Yeah, there I was in my uncomfortable position, and she was killing it.
You were the side note.
I was a side note, which was great. I was much better yesterday than I was Sunday ago, because Sunday
Yeah.
before I had I felt like it was scripted.
Yeah.
But last time it was just me commenting on me answering questions.
Right.
And she was like, because I told Julie, I said, "Man, you're really funny. Like you have comedic timing, and you did some things that were." And she said, "I've always told you I'm funny. Like why does that surprise you? I've told you I'm funny."
She is.
But I was like, okay, whatever. And she says I'm not funny. She said
Yeah.
when you try to be funny, you're not funny. But when you just respond to things, sometimes you're funny.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it was funny that you were laughing at me. That's what makes me laugh when
Yeah.
she's sitting there laughing at me like. And I don't think she's laughing at me like, oh, look at my awesome husband, he's hilarious. I think she's more laughing at me like, you're just.
Yeah, it's not a laughing at, with you. It's
No,
laughing at
yeah,
you.
100%. Yeah, like, oh man, but it was good though. It was
Nice.
funny.
It was awesome.
I was honest. I mean,
It was funny. You do the same thing that I do and my mom does. I make fun of her for it, and now Taylor makes fun of me for it. But you were sitting there while Julie was reading the script.
oh,
You
I was
were
moving my
reading-
mouth. Can you tell I was moving my? Yeah, I was doing yes. Yeah.
It made me laugh.
Julie's like, why's your mouth? Like we were watching. She goes, why's your mouth moving?
If I'm ever like watching a video and I know what the person says, I'm just
Yeah.
like I'm saying it for them in my head.
She was funny, dude. It was good.
Yeah, it was good.
I believe you won't be getting sweet potato casserole for Thanksgiving.
Well, here's some what I didn't realize is that because Julie's struggle with sweet potato casserole over the last like 2 years ago, I guess she started asking Christina to make it, which is my oldest son's wife, Cole's wife, and so she makes it now, which is great. And so,
It's great because it's not
Ooh.
running.
well, hers is still great. It's just like I say, it's got a short shelf life. 2 minutes out of the oven.
Vegan.
And but so Christina calls me last night, and she was like, "Why are you busting my chops on my sweet potato casserole?"
Oh.
I'm like, no. I wasn't talking about yours. She goes, I brought it the last 2 years. So what's the deal?
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I'm getting chopped everywhere.
You know,
Yep.
Cole set that up. He's
Oh,
like, you gotta call him.
100%. Dude. She wasn't, gonna call me. Yeah, call me out. Maybe.
Yeah.
But
Joey's dad was super brutally honest. And one year Joey and I were asked to bring deviled eggs.
Mm.
Or my
I love
mom
deviled
calls them
eggs.
dressed eggs, whatever they're
deviled
called.
eggs. Dressed eggs?
Yeah, she calls them dressed
Why?
because it's my mother.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
And she can
And
because
she
she's
can
my mother.
because she does. Yeah. That's what she does.
Anyways, we were
Dressed
asked
eggs.
to bring those. I'd never made them. There's the disclaimer, right? Hey, yeah, sure. Okay.
You never made them.
So I found a Martha Stewart recipe. Epic fail. Probably operator error. Definitely operator error. Long story short, a couple of meals later, we're talking about that particular meal, the Thanksgiving meal, and Joey's dad says, yeah, I don't know who made those eggs. Those were the worst I've ever had. Like he just kept going on and on and on. And so I was like, it'd be me.
That's like, hilarious. Even if they're bad, will Joey try to rescue you and say, oh, no, they were great?
No, he just laughed the whole time.
Okay, nice. Nice.
Because he could see me just like shrinking in my chair.
Yeah. I love deviled eggs, though. I've been seeing a bunch of recipes for those are like deviled egg sliders, which is like a deviled egg, and then a little mini hamburger patty in the middle.
Terrible.
That sounds so good.
Terrible. No.
Oh, I think it's
you're
amazing.
ruining a good thing in a deviled egg.
That's a big thing at weddings now too, as an appetizer.
Really?
Like they'll just come around with a tray.
Deviled
of
eggs.
Just the deviled eggs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like,
Then I saw fried deviled eggs yesterday.
Stupid. No,
I don't know
stupid.
about that.
I'm going to give you the S word, stupid.
Speaking of dressing or dressed
Wait a
eggs.
minute. Well, we've not said enough about deviled eggs. I'm a deviled egg snob. I rarely will I eat anybody else's deviled eggs other than Julie's. Yeah, she makes the best deviled eggs.
You're trying to give her credit since you.
they're not running.
No,
tuna casserole last week.
because no. I mean, like here's the deal. Her sweet potato casserole tastes amazing.
How about tuna casserole?
Tuna casserole is terrible, but sweet potato casserole is great. But I'm just telling you, man, it's just like because you scoop a bunch out and then it's the brown sugar. It's got to be the brown sugar.
Yeah.
But Dina told me, Dina came up and said that hers doesn't do that at all, but she uses the Loveless Cafe recipe. And she said, yeah, so.
I can hear Julie now saying, as she's listened to it, well, maybe you should just go to Dina's house and have it then.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. I told her that. I said, well, great, maybe she'd send the recipe. So I said, well, no, it don't matter because Christina does it now. So
Yeah, nice.
we're good. Deviled eggs, though, man,
Yeah.
she can kill those.
Good stuff. Welcome to Beyond the Sermon, everyone.
Yeah.
I was going to comment on your nightgown, though, because you mentioned the nightgown and everybody laughed, but they don't realize that's a real thing.
I know. That's like it didn't get any more conversation on the. But I mean, yeah,
It's like, hit the floor and you moved on.
Well, I use the phrase nightgown instead of night shirt
Yeah.
because it's really a night shirt.
Is it?
Really? It's awesome, man. Night shirts are awesome.
That
Are
was
you kidding right now? You're
huh?
kidding.
He's dead serious.
Yeah.
I might be disturbed by that.
I've got a red plaid. I don't know where it is, though. I need to get another one. I haven't had one in a while.
See, I thut you got rid of it. There was
Yeah.
one day
You stole it when you live with me. You stole it.
when we found out about it, I don't remember how it came up in conversation, but you had left the room for something and Julie went and got it and I put it on and you came back in the room and I had it on. And she said she hadn't seen it since then either.
Red plaid, really very comfortable.
Nice.
Yeah,
Sounds awesome.
like a hat, a hat with the little. Yeah, straight out of a Charles Dickens novel.
Right. That's awesome. All right.
That's me.
I guess we'll talk about the message now.
Yep, let's do that.
So last message.
Man, last commandment.
Yeah.
I didn't think I would enjoy this series as much as I have.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of hard to say. Like,
what does that
oh
mean?
darn, I got to preach the 10 Commandments. It wasn't like that, but
Yeah.
it was just it just got better and better, man.
Yeah. That was good stuff.
I mean, I don't know. It was really cool. Like, just dive in and really study the 10 Commandments and then kind of see it expand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things from early on in
Yeah, you
Sunday
just
school
know
that you're taught. One thing that was interesting with this one, when we were looking at some of the, it was a couple of weeks I was preparing for our life group discussion, and I'd just like search second commandment, probably not second. It was further in, I think, when this happened, but fourth commandment, small group discussion questions just to kind of get some ideas, get started. And I'd click on one and it'd be a different one. Like the one before, one behind it would say is the fourth commandment. And what I realized is like Catholics have a different order of commandments than we do. And I think there's another one too. But basically on this one, what they do is they see the covet commandment, which it says don't covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, donkey, ox, all this, or anything of your neighbor's. They basically split that into two commandments of don't covet your neighbor's wife and don't covet your neighbor's house and belongings and everything else. And so then they combine, I think, one of the first few that are pretty similar. But anyway, so why do you think it just made me think like a lot of the other ones leading up to this are don't murder, don't steal.
Just kind of one, yeah.
Yeah. So what's up? Like, why is the last one you kind of get a mini list and then it's still all inclusive? So you could have just said don't covet.
Right.
But it said don't covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, donkey, ox, or anything of your neighbors. So why is there like a little list and then kind of just open it up to everything else?
I think this commandment has a whole lot more to do with our relationship with our neighbor than it does actually the stuff that you're coveting. And I think it's both and not either or, but that's why it references neighbor, because it doesn't say don't covet houses, don't covet donkeys, don't covet, whatever. And most guys that you will read will say that when you look at the list is kind of representative of like relationships, possessions, stuff like that. Like you can see in social status, those are three things. Yeah. So, back in the time that this was written, you've got neighbor's wife, which was relationships, neighbor's house, which is stuff. And then it kind of starts listing like goats and donkeys. And so the more of those you had, the more higher you were in the social status ladder.
Yeah, gotcha.
So it's basically saying, don't covet your neighbor's social status, your neighbor's, relationships, and your neighbor's possessions. Yeah. It's kind of the reason it gives that type of list.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That makes sense. It really is more about, and because what's interesting is one guy said this, and I thought was a great comment, that when something of your neighbor's becomes the object of your desire, your neighbor will quickly become the object of your disdain. So, think about that. So, and again, great statement, not original to me. But it was when something of your neighbor's becomes the object of your desire, your neighbor will quickly become the object of your disdain. And so the illustration that he used was King David.
Yeah.
And he said, you take David's situation where, man, Uriah was one of his best friends.
Yeah.
But when something of his neighbor's, which was Bathsheba, became the object of his desire, Uriah became the object of his disdain. So he had to get rid of Uriah. He wanted to get rid of Uriah. And so, here he loved this guy and was his, one of his great friends. And next thing you know, he's putting him on the front line of battle to be killed. So I think that's a great picture and just a great statement to think about. Like when you think, and I think that statement kind of not wraps up, but kind of really says the meat of that whole commandment.
Yeah.
Is when we find ourselves doing that, then, and it's so funny because when I thought about that, I used the Wayne Parker illustration of playing golf with Wayne and him hitting his driver well and me not, and I just kept staring at his driver and I'm like, man, I got to get one of those, man. I got to get one of those. Like I could see it rolling into, not that I felt this way at all, but it's funny to think about it. Like the more you go, and the more Wayne hits his driver well, the more a person could go, I hate Wayne Parker. like the worse you do and the better he does, it's like you begin hating the person instead. You know what I'm saying? Like you see that kind of roll into that kind of scenario. Yeah. And it really is that because you start coveting something like that, and the thing leads to something else. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the heart of this command.
And it keeps us from loving our neighbor as ourselves.
And that's it. Yeah. Like, how can you love your neighbor when you're coveting something your neighbor has?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. We did have a few questions this week. One of them wasn't actually a question, so I'll start off with that. But you mentioned it not being a good series, just kind of, or not expecting, and it ended up being enjoying it more. But someone just said, you've talked about so many times that we cannot expect our relationships, whether our spouse or our friendships, to be our source of satisfaction. I think that I've found that as I think about that and focus on that, I see that when I'm disappointed or upset with someone, it's because I'm expecting them to satisfy whatever I'm looking for. So thank you for preaching to us in a way that we can understand and apply God's word practically to our lives and have a much better perspective of relationships now that I know that my focus is not on that person, but on Jesus completely satisfying me. So yeah, that's a nice comment. I agree. Just for all of us, focusing our satisfaction on Jesus and not on relationships or on anything this world can offer, but finding that in him is so key.
Yeah, that's a great comment, man. And thank you for whoever brought that, because that's what you want to hear. Like, you want to hear that God's word's going out. You know, the Bible says that God's word doesn't return void. So the Holy Spirit's using it in people's lives. But when we're trying to dig deeper and make it practical and applicable. And because it's just to me, it's just not enough to create great history lessons and to create lots of information or theological isms and statements and words. And, you know, we're not trying to create academic Christians. You know, nothing wrong with that, but that's not really to me, that's not the core of discipleship. The core of discipleship is, man, how is this changing your life? How is this making your life, you know, with your relationships and the things that you're dealing with every day, have a better Jesus type perspective. Right. So we want to see these relationships, what we would call Christologically. I want to see them through the lens of Christ and not through, you know, the lens of, and again, what we do is we just put undue pressure on all of these relationships, and we go, man, they're not working. And, you know, that's like taking a, you know, whatever, I won't think of something that would be a silly illustration, but, and using it for something it wasn't created to do and going, well, that thing doesn't work. Now, it works perfectly fine for what it was created for, but it doesn't work for this. And I think that's what we do a lot of times. And we see it happen with our spouses, with our kids, with our, you know, any relationship that we're involved in, friends, you know. I learned really quickly years ago that, and I won't mention names because you guys that gives you more fodder to make fun of me of name dropping. But when I would meet these guys and we would all be friends and all this kind of stuff, and you know, when we were at camp or whatever, well, then throughout the year you'd see him and you'd go, dude, that guy came into town and come in and call me. You know, how come we're not hanging out? Why aren't we doing lunch? You know, and you're like, it's not what that relationship is. You know, like you realize, and well, like once you understand that, you go, okay, I'm okay with that. It's good. Doesn't make it bad. Doesn't make it wrong. It's just what it is. When I see you in that context, it's all good. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. Doesn't mean you're whatever. That's just what it is. And so, like when you get that, you go, okay, man, I don't need that to be something more than it is. So now my perspective of that person changed. Because before, when I thought, well, man, that person really is this or is that, or they don't. All of a sudden, you go and you realize, and you go, okay, that's not this, it's this, and it's good. Well, now that, you know, that person went kind of back up. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes we just look at relationships and we want them to be so much more, and they're just not. That's okay. You know, and I think that's because I can't depend on those things to be, you know, my source of what makes me feel good, valued, validated, or whatever.
Absolutely. But the world tells us that that's where you get that.
That's
you get
right.
It from relationships or from something in this world. And if you can't get it from that, then you get it from yourself. You figure it out and you find it in yourself.
Absolutely.
But it's never meant to satisfy. They ask, logically, I don't want to covet, but my feelings tell me to covet. So I don't want to feel this way. So how do I make myself not feel the desire to covet?
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one, you know, like, because I think take that down to the core. That's basically saying, how do I not walk in my flesh? Because I think our flesh is always going to want to covet. You know, so I think when you deal with like any of these commandments, sin in general, whatever, we can kind of deal with that one of two ways. We can stay in the flesh and fight the battle, or we can walk in the Spirit and grow away from those things. And I think people will do it. Sometimes we do some things one way or the other, you know, sometimes. So it's not, again, I wish it was either or, but most of the times it's both and, right? And I think with this particular situation, this is hard because, you know, I think there's a difference between coveting something and wanting to do better for your family. You know, there's a difference between, man, me looking at my neighbor and seeing that my neighbor has got something, and I'm going, man, how come they got that and I don't? How did they get that? Man, how did that, you know? And now I start getting mad at them. Like, you don't deserve that, you know, but there's something in my heart that desires that wants that, because my neighbor has it and I don't have it. And if I just had it, it's going to make me feel a certain way and bring something to me. And well, just think about that, man. I mean, like you're looking at something and you're saying that thing can bring me a sense of joy, satisfaction, and happiness that I don't have right now. And you go, wait a minute, I thought you were in a relationship with Jesus. Well, yeah, but that's not, okay, well, just bring it down to the earth then. I mean, what if, as a man, you're watching TV or whatever, and you're coveting this woman on TV, and you're thinking to yourself, man, if I could just see that more or be with that person, man, I would be this, that, and the other. And your wife's right there beside you. Like, would you do that? Well, like, would you, would we as a man, would you do that knowing your wife is right there? Number one, you shouldn't do it anyway. Number two, no. Like, that's a simple, right? But you go, well, I'm sorry, honey, but, she's just better. Mm. So, so what is it that we say to Jesus when whatever it is we think it is that we need, that we're chasing after, that he, what if he just tapped us on the shoulder every time we began to kind of step into that, and all of a sudden he goes, hey, I thought we were, well, I know that's just better. Because that's really what we're saying.
Yeah.
And so I think that's how, and again, we now let me say that it's not just I think it is a walk to Jesus and a walk toward Jesus, and it's us finding our satisfaction in what we have instead of yearning for what we don't have, right? Mm-hmm. Because the devil will always convince us, go back to the garden, that we have a need that we don't have. Mm-hmm. So he's always convincing us. I mean, covetousness, I think, is probably one of his key tools in his toolbox. Yeah. Because, again, Eve desired the tree. He caused her to desire the tree. So she got to a point to where that she really believed, man, I'm lacking something and I need that. Yeah. When, we need to believe in what we have and not what we don't have. Like we get all those kind of cliches. But I think we always have to be careful. And I say this over and over because it's what I have to tell myself. Utilitarian view. Like we got to create utilitarian views of these things, because if we don't, then we will find ourselves chasing after things that we don't realize or understand. Doesn't satisfy. So take that view, and someone could say, well, it doesn't sound like you had a utilitarian view of wrestling, because you continued to wrestle, and one tournament wasn't enough, and so you went to another. Well, yes, because I wasn't looking for that to be my source of satisfaction. I'm just competitive and enjoyed the sport. So a utilitarian view of that says, okay, if I'm going to pursue that and do that, then I've got to see, how can I use this to glorify God through this, right? How can I use this? Because God is giving me the opportunity to do it, so obviously he wants to have glory through that. So I want to make sure that how I do it, why I do it, all of that, makes more sense. I remember when I first became a Christian, and I thought, okay, here's the way that I don't look at this the wrong. Like this happened like right when I got saved, man. Yeah. My perspective all of a sudden changed. It really didn't. I just made myself change it. And I said, so here's what we're going to do. Every time we win a gold medal, we're going to give it away. So I just gave away all my medals. Well, that didn't make me not want more. It just made me think, man, I can't believe I gave that away. Like it was so funny because like we would win them. And like we would be there, and a bunch of kids would be around, and we'd walk over and give our medal away to some of the kids. I'm like, it's like now I'm like, man, I wish I kind of would have had those. I could have showed my kid, Yeah. But I mean, it don't matter, dude. It wasn't like they were real, or what I'm saying. Yeah. But like that didn't keep me from wanting to go get one more. Yeah. And so it's not, you just got to have a utilitarian view. It's not that we don't take advantage of opportunities. It's not that we don't try to do better for ourselves and for our families and things of that nature. But again, we always have to be wrestling with the why question and kind of the purpose behind it and how it's God going to get glorified through that. Mm-hmm. Because when we ask ourselves those questions, it makes things make sense. Yeah. Because here's what I know. And this was a good friend of mine tells me all the time. That a $25 Timex keeps the same time that a $500 wristwatch does, or a $10,000 wristwatch. Not that I have but I'm like, I mean, you're right. Yeah. I don't like that, but you're right. But he's right. I mean, but see, that's not necessarily a fair statement, because I could say to you, Cameron, that a $100 guitar makes the same sound as a $5,000 guitar. Yeah,
that's not true, though.
Yeah, exactly. It's not true. It's not true. Now, do you need a $5,000 guitar?
No.
Would you like to have a $5,000 guitar?
Sure.
Exactly. Does that make it wrong?
In and of itself?
Yeah.
I don't know that in and of itself it's wrong. But if that's the thing that I'm seeking after to get that itch or that satisfaction that I'm looking for, then I think that's where it could become a wrong.
Has there never been a guitar that you looked at, you said, man, I really want that, and I'm going to work toward getting that?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that not coveting?
If we look at it, so I would go back to what you said about coveting being a relationship thing. If it's coveting, can I covet it from a store, or is this speaking specifically to your neighbor's things and your relationships there?
Yeah, I think it could be both, because I think there are things that we chase after to find a source of contentment or satisfaction in, that may not necessarily be something our neighbor has or own. You know what I mean? I think this commandment specifically deals with our relationship with our neighbor. Yeah. But I mean, we could turn to ladies and say, like, I know ladies that have numbers of purses.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Patty's a purse person or not, but I mean, I've known women who have like multiple purses, certain types, certain brands.
Yeah.
Is that wrong? I mean, I think it's wrong if I think, hey, once I get a Gucci purse, or I get a Louis Vuitton purse, or I get a whatever the purse brands are, I'm not up on those. That, man, now I'm in. Like, now I got it, Yeah. And you're like, no, because it's always going to be something else. And somebody else is going to have that. You're going to walk through Lebanon, and all of a sudden you're going to go, I thought I was the only person in Lebanon who had this.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't matter what it is. I don't think having a $5,000 guitar necessarily means you've coveted that.
Right.
Unless you feel like, man, once I get this, I'm going to be like, that's only you can determine that.
Right.
I think we ask the question, is it reasonable? Does it make sense? Is it, like there's other questions you can ask, right? We've talked about that from a financial perspective that really, I think, don't necessarily deal with coveting.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who enjoy $200 fountain pens.
Yeah.
Right. Well, man, I got a $45 fountain pen I enjoy writing with.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this, a $200 fountain pen writes and feels a whole lot better than a $40 fountain pen. So it just does. Now, does that make it wrong? I don't need that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I remember back when I was early in ministry, everybody had the Mont Blanc pens. Do you remember those?
We talked about it a few weeks ago. I'd never heard of it.
The black pens with the little white snow cap top on them. Have you ever seen those? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, man, it was the big deal. I'll never forget going to like conferences and stuff, and all the preachers would have their Mont Blanc pens. I'm like, dude, look at that, man. That dude's got it going, man. And they were like $100 at the time, And that was a whole lot. I mean, like I never got one. I still don't have one.
Yeah.
But I thought, man, like I just remember thinking though, as a young minister, like, man, dude, if I could just get one of those Mont Blanc pens, man, that'd be awesome. Like, what am I going to write with it? When like I was, right. But anyway, so I think it's just stuff like that we see and we go, and I think it's, I mean, I want to say it's younger, like the younger as you're kind of going, because I could say that I can't think there's a lot of things like that right now for me that I would say, oh man, if I had this, I would feel this way.
Yeah.
I don't think at my stage of life that there are things that, now there are things that I enjoy, there are things that I like, there are things that I look and I can go, oh, I could see like things that I have like hobbies and stuff that I could, so man, I could see this at the right price because I know it would sell for this, and I love to trade and stuff like that. So, but it's not like, oh, if I got that, I would feel this way.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you have to really be careful with, man, if I could just get this, if I could just get those shoes, if I could just get that purse, if I could just get that fill in the blank, it really doesn't matter what it is. Sure.
Where's the line of that like satisfaction piece? Because I'm also thinking like there's some things for me just in the phase of life that I'm in that I'm like, man, if I had this, not necessarily I'm finding my satisfaction in that, but if I had this, then it would free up so much time in my life to be able to pour into this.
Absolutely.
So is there coveting in that as well? Is that still trying to find your satisfaction in something? Or is that just desiring to have things for other purposes or other reasons?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great real life practical question.
Yeah.
Because there are things that I think come along that, man, sometimes they just make life easier. Sometimes they just help. And I don't think that's coveting. I think because again, it's internal. Why does it need to be easier? What does that mean? What does that need to be? You know, so does it need to be so that I can do this, be that, feel this way? You know, so I can't, it's hard to answer that.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's not black and white. I can't say that, you know, for you to get whatever that is, oh, well, that's coveting for you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how that makes you feel. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you roll up in a, well, I can't even say that because vehicles are so expensive these days.
Yeah.
But
well, and really that's part of where my question came from is like, I've got the old Jeep, like, cause I could pay cash for it.
Yeah.
And I probably could have got something different. But there's also a pride element to that of like, I wanted something cool and cheap.
Yeah.
But too, like there was just not that much
Right.
that cheap anyways. And so like there's time that I spend fixing things on the Jeep that if I wasn't fixing it, then I could be spending with the kids or
right. Absolutely.
whatever else. And so,
but I think where it turns into coveting, I think is like for you, like in yours, like where you are right now, you roll up with a blinged out $80,000 2-seater BMW and you go, hey man, this is really going to make my life easier. And I'm like, yeah, you can't haul your kids around in it. You've strapped yourself in debt. And why did you really get that at this stage of your life?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, well, dude, I just really wanted this.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't make any sense. You know, and I think it's those types of things that we can find ourselves chasing after and going, yeah, that's probably, because, you know, sometimes it's internal. Like I can't tell how does something make you feel, because that could be really easy. It could be something simple, you know, like there could be something in your world electronically that I know nothing about.
Yeah.
That you've coveted after because you saw another person that you know has it, and man, you're like, dude, I gotta have, if I can just get, you know, and you get that. Nobody else knows about it but you.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's where it's just that internal wrestle that we have, that struggle that we have in that.
Yeah, for sure. So that kind of goes into the next question somebody asked. They said, is it wrong to covet even when you come from a poor home with little food and needs? So how do you approach someone who comes from a home like the one described above and is stuck in coveting what myself and others have? It's challenging when I was born in a more privileged home, and I'm not sure how to approach the situation as a whole. So yeah, that's a
So I asked that again. I'm
question.
trying to frame that because I was thinking of an answer as you were reading it.
Okay. I'll read it. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it wrong to covet even when you come from a poor home with little food and needs? And then how do you approach someone who comes from a home like this and is stuck in coveting what myself and others have? It's challenging when I was born in a more privileged home and I'm not sure how to approach the situation.
Yeah.
So is it wrong for someone in a poor home to covet? And then how do we approach that if someone is coveting after the things that we have coming from a more privileged?
Yeah. So I can speak to that because, you know, Julie and I came from completely different backgrounds.
Yeah.
But I can't say that. I can say this. I can say that I don't know that either one was any better than the other. They're just different.
Yeah.
You know, because my mom and dad, and again, it may just be my perspective. My brother and my sister may have had a different perspective on this. But from my perspective, my mom and dad, you know, my dad was very blue collar, low income. We just didn't have much, man. My mom never worked. And my dad worked, and again, he was just an uneducated, low income, blue collar guy. But it was our life, you know. It was the only life we knew. And please hear me, guys. I don't say any of this for pity or like I want you to feel sorry for me because I was the poor white kid on the block. It's good, man. Like I look at my childhood somehow, and I think everybody should have lived like I did. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
I don't know if God just helped me to have that perspective, or mom and dad just did an amazing job of making sure that wasn't our focus.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was just like, it was good, man. And I've told you guys these stories. You know, my mom, we would go out during the days in the summertime and we would collect Coke bottles, because back then you could sell Coke bottles in the grocery store and you could get money for it. And so that's what we had to do sometimes to make sure we had bread and milk. And so mom made it a game. She made it a competitive game. She knew she had 2 boys and we were very competitive. And so, hey, whoever collects the most bottles today, you know, is going to get a candy bar, or going to get, you know, you're going to get something at the end of the day. So I don't know how she knew to do that, but she did. And so we didn't take it as, man, I can't believe we're out here walking the trenches on the roads, searching for Coke bottles. Man, I can't believe we got to do that. It was like, hey, man, we get to, and my brother and I just would go after it, and at the end of the day, we'd go to Food Town, and Mom would turn the bottles in, and she'd sell them, and she'd get $2.50 or whatever it was, and she'd get some milk and a loaf of bread. We were good. Like there was never in my mind, because I didn't know what other people were eating at their house, and my dad's parents, we would go spend time with them, and they were very simple country people, and we always had milk because they had a milk cow, and we always had, there was just always stuff. I mean, so I didn't know what to compare. I didn't have anything to compare that to, and we went to public school. And so I would see other kids, but again, the clothes that we had were just what they were. And so anyway, all that to say, the older I got, I began to recognize and see, like I remember when I was in high school and people started driving, and on all the buddies that I had, the one thing that athletics did for me is that athletics somehow, it's just, I don't know, it's a weird, in that world, kind of trumped economic status. So like we were like really poor, but I was I don't want to say great, sounds arrogant, but I did well in athletics, and so like that trumped all that. Like I got to hang out with all the people that had the money. I remember one guy, as soon as he turned 16, he got this cool jacked up Jeep. I'm like, man, dude, how's that work, man? I'm walking to school, I'm hanging out, man. But it was okay because I would use that motivation to say, well, that's okay because I'm going to be better in athletics than anybody at this school because we don't have all that stuff, but I got this. So I'm going to chase after this. This is going to be my thing. You know what I mean? And so that's just how we lived. And it was, and I mean, it wasn't like it got better in high school, and even into college. When I met Julie, I mean, I wore the athletic garb that they gave us, and I had a couple pair of shorts and a couple pair of blue jeans, and that was it, Yeah. But I mean, I didn't care because I spent most of my time in the wrestling room, Right. And so, and it was good. And so, Julie's perspective, much, much different than that. But in all of that, it wasn't like, so I think when you're raised up that way and you come from that, it's hard. It's hard not to think that, especially when you get a little older, and like I did, got into college seminary, and started getting jobs. I'm like, well, dude, I'm going to buy a car, and so I never had those things. I never had vehicles, So I was like, okay, I'm going to buy a car. So I got into this trap of trading cars and getting upside down in cars when I was young because I just didn't know until somebody finally set me down and said, dude, you got to quit doing this because you're killing yourself. A great Christian man helped me with that. But that was a result, I think, of, man, not having something and thinking, hey, I can finally do this, and then, all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're trapped, right? Because that's what, when I talked about Samson in the message, how that life, it really is a miserable journey of misguided course correction, and a lot of that for me was kind of a personal testimony of when I was young, because, I had this view of, okay, now that I've got my degree, and now that I've got a job, a job making more money than my dad ever made in his whole life, probably, man, I'm going to correct some things, so I'm going to buy a new car, and and you do that, and next thing you know, man, you're just like, you're locked up, you're in prison, you're in debt, you're upside down in vehicles, and you kind of so I could say, well, is it easier from the person's perspective who had nothing and they're coming into something, or the person who's always had something and wants to maintain that lifestyle? Man, I can honestly say Julie is probably the most generous person I've ever been around. Like, she will give stuff away. Anytime she spends money, it's always on somebody else. It's never on herself. Like, it's just how she's wired,
Yeah.
Now, she does it a lot, and so sometimes I have to say, hey, I appreciate your generosity, but we got to pay our bills, what I mean? So, but it's always just, man, that's just her heart, but that's how she grew up. That's what she saw modeled in her home, and that's what she does.
Yeah.
So, like, I've never seen her I don't know that I can ever say I've seen her want for. I don't say want for anything because it's not like I'm just lavish. And I don't, we don't have the resources to just go, but she just doesn't care. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just not like, oh man, I'd really like to have that watch, or I'd like to have this set of earrings, or I'd like to have this, or I'd like to have that. I mean, it's just the weirdest thing, because I'll go, hey, listen, man, I think I'm going to buy you a watch this year for Christmas. No, I'm good. I'm like, yeah, but I like watches. Like, let me buy you a watch I would want you to have, And she's like, if you do, I'm probably not going to appreciate it the way that you would want me to, because I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, okay, what but that's just, so, man, so that's our background. So I think to answer the question, again, you've got to always wrestle with this, because I think it can come from both sides, from the person who doesn't have anything, is it, man, you're going to come, especially if you come into situations, you've got to realize that there's nothing out there there's nothing physical, material out there that can bring you any source of satisfaction. Doesn't mean you wouldn't enjoy it. Doesn't mean that it's not nice. Doesn't mean it's not, again, because things in and of themselves aren't evil. They're not wrong. They may not be smart, but it's not evil or wrong, Now, I think the other side of that question is really an interesting question. People look, like somebody said, people look at us. We have things, and the Lord's blessed us. And so, wasn't the question like, how do we deal with people who look at us in a certain way?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And I think from that, like the people, and we've got some great, great families in this church who the Lord's blessed them and blessed them greatly. It's always their attitude.
Yeah.
It's never how they look at their, don't, and I say this, don't apologize for your stuff.
Yeah.
Like that if the Lord's blessed you and you're able to do things like, man, that's awesome. Praise God for that. That's another person's coveting is not your problem.
Right.
Right. So just, understand that. Now, but I think we've got to ask ourselves the question, are we being good stewards with God's resources? Are we using what God's given us in a way that when we stand before Him and we answer for the things that we've done in our flesh at the judgment seat of Christ, is this all going to burn up, or is there going to be some redemptive value out of what we had and how we used it?
Right.
Like it doesn't make a lot of sense for me. Like in my mind, hobbies, whatever. Like if I'm just doing stuff just so that I can find some satisfaction out of it, then I got to ask myself the question, man, is that really smart? Or am I using it somehow for God's glory to get glory out of? Then that's different.
Yeah.
So again, it's so individual, but I would always say to people, man, I've met super godly people who God has blessed, and you could just tell being around them, man, it's how they treat people, not how they treat their stuff.
Right.
So I would say to to this person the same thing, man, it's all in how you treat people. I don't, there aren't social classes in heaven. That's the beauty of heaven, is that we're all on the same playing field.
Yeah.
There's not poor people and rich people in heaven. There's not well-to-dos and, haves and have-nots and all that. There's just not. Everybody's the same.
Yeah.
And the beauty of heaven is we don't care. We won't care then. I mean, if streets are made of gold, we don't care about stuff. The things that we value here are not what we value there. Mm. And so how do we take that mentality and bring it down to this earth? What do we really value? And I think that's the question, because I could go into 15 illustrations. Any of us could pick anything, I mean, like I've told you before, dude, I would love to have a 57 Gibson Explorer hanging on my wall, but why do I need a $10,000 guitar hanging on my wall?
Yeah.
Like, how is that bringing God glory? Unless I can take it in 5 years, I'm going to sell it for $15,000, and I'm going to take that $5,000 and use it for, what I'm saying? That's business investments. I mean, you can't really get into, man, this is right and this is wrong.
Right.
That's where we have to be careful.
Mm. Yep.
I mean, there are people, dude, that operate on a plane I can't even understand.
Yeah.
They buy vehicles at certain prices and they hold on to them for 5 years and they sell them, and man, they're just smart. God's given them that gift. I may go do that, and all of a sudden now I'm where I feel like I need to be because I got this particular car.
Right.
that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, hey, look at me. You know what I mean? Look what I have. Look who I. And then all of a sudden inside, I'm like, man, this is what I'm loving, not Jesus.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Patty, you're gonna ask something to that?
Yeah, going back to your point, I think the heart of it is basically having a heart for gracious and grateful living. You know, when we are grateful for what we have,
Absolutely.
we don't seem to look on the other side and think of what we don't.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that is one way to kind of propel us toward or away from, to keep us from coveting. It's just to thank God daily for what we do have.
Yep,
and again, I don't have a frame of reference for an upbringing of want. Not that we were overflowing with things,
Sure.
but I just say that from a biblical standpoint of, for any station in life, of just an attitude of gratitude for what the Lord has given and for his provision for us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of the two-part nature of that question, I think, is it wrong to covet even if you come from a poor home and have needs? I mean, at the end of the day, yes.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
coveting
Yeah.
is coveting. And so if it's telling us not to coveting, then that still falls under that. But I think y'all both answered it well with how do you approach someone who may be dealing with this when you're on the other side of that. I think it's two-part, being grateful and thankful for what we have, but it's also being able to and it's not support in a way that like you're now just like paying them just to pay them, but being generous in what we've been given. Like you said, Julie's one of the most generous people that you know. Like she's just she wants to give. A lot of the people in this church that have a lot are very generous people and want to support and help and give in any way they can. So,
but see, she grew up watching her dad do that.
Yeah.
And see, that's where that comes from, man, because, you know, so many times her dad would do those things, you know, in his business would, you know, somebody who he thought was working hard, trying to do better, and they needed a car. Man, he would loan them the money, knowing he wasn't going to get the money back.
Right.
You know, but that wasn't the point. You know, he never worried about chasing that person down and getting that back. He just felt like, man, you know, he just blessed, you know, because he wanted that person to do better. Yeah. You know, it's an attitude. I mean, you know, don't apologize for what you have, but use it for God's glory.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, that's because if you have it, God gave it to you.
That's right.
So use it for His glory.
In the first place.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good. And then the last question that someone asked is, I think what you said about coveting your neighbors was very eye-opening for me. I'll be honest, there's been times that I've been jealous of something that a friend had or something that they were able to do. So do you think you can covet without being jealous? And can you truly love someone if you're jealous of them? So maybe good just to kind of lay the stage. Is there a difference in jealousy and coveting?
Yeah.
Can you do one without the other? And then can you truly love someone without being jealous?
Yeah, I think coveting leads to jealousy.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that's the whole, like this question is the whole impetus of that command.
Yeah.
It's all about your neighbor. You know, man, great insight on this person to say, man, how can I love my neighbor if I'm jealous of who they are and what they have?
Yep.
And that's exactly what this is saying. How can you love your neighbor as yourself if I'm coveting what they have? And so I think jealousy steps in kind of the same. That's kind of the engine that drives coveting, right? So if I'm jealous of what somebody has, that's driving, that feeling is driving me to want to covet and want what they have. And so, no, I think you can't love your neighbor as yourself when you're jealous and you're coveting. You know, again, it goes back to me coveting my neighbor's property. All that does is reveal a dissatisfaction in my own heart. Okay, so when I find myself coveting something my neighbor has, I've got to turn that around and say, what is this saying about me? So why am I dissatisfied in this part of my life? And I feel like I need that to make me who I need to be. Because here's the thing, guys. When you covet, you don't covet and you're not rational. Like we're talking about having rational thoughts in the middle or in the context of sin. Like Eve was not thinking rationally when the devil said, God did not say this, and she started desiring the tree. So it's not like you're going to look at your neighbor driving up in his brand new car and you start coveting his car and all of a sudden you go, I wonder what source of dissatisfaction this is revealing in me. Like that's not going to be your first comment because you're not in a rational position if you're coveting something your neighbor has. You know, you got to back up and maybe go to your spouse, go to somebody and say, man, I'm really having a problem with this. And let them kind of help dig and start revealing that for you, or somebody you treat, somebody you trust. Because I think that's like, we just don't, because if you're rational, if we're in tune with Christ then you're not going to have that thought.
Yeah.
So we can easily find ourselves slipping there. And I don't know, a lot of these things I've often wondered, and I've said this before, does some of these things just get clear when you get older?
Yeah.
And I see you smiling. I mean, I'm smiling about that too, because I kind of think it does. Yeah. I mean, dude, I would have never, I don't know that 20 years ago I would be driving the car I'm driving today.
Yeah.
Because I would have thought like, man, I deserve a better car than that. I mean, I drive my youngest son's car he drove in college that he didn't want anymore, so he could have something nicer because he's got a job and he wants to. I'm like, okay, I sold him my car and I drive his car.
You sold him the car that you got for your senior pastor car.
I sold him my senior pastor car. Yeah. Yep. Which I just owed a very little on it. But I was
proves your point that you're saying too.
Bless him and get him in something nice and get his career started. And so I said, okay, well, I'll tell you what, man, I'll just take that back since I bought it for you to begin with. And man, you take this and you're good and you got good equity in this car and man, I'll drive this and man, we're good.
Yeah.
He's like, really? It's like, yeah, they don't care. Like, I just don't care. I mean, Julie's got a nice car and we drive that. And if I need to drive that, just something nice, I'll just drive that,
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm my house to the church to the hospital, whatever. So, but I'm 61 years old too, and I just don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me as much anymore. Yeah. But I don't know that I would have said that about my 35-year-old self.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It was always, okay, man, when I get a certain age, I bet when I get 60, I'm going to have lots of money and I'm going to get that, And it's like, that's not that big a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though I still covet my friend's driver and his golf bag. Not really. I was just using an illustration. It was funny. All my golfing buddies were like, dude, you got to quit being so confessional. Like, you're killing us, man. You're killing us.
Mike, I was talking to Mike at the deacon ordination Sunday night. He said, your sins are fine to mention those, but don't bring us into it. Yeah. Like, why are you bringing us into your issues?
Don't be dragging us into your stuff, preacher.
Yeah.
It was funny. I was looking up, kind of mentioned just jealousy versus coveting.
Yeah.
And the difference in those. This made a really good point. Said that there obviously is a difference. Coveting is when you want what someone else has, whereas envy or jealousy is when you don't want something else to have what they've been given. So use the example of Joseph in the Bible, his brothers, when they didn't, if Joseph was on the same playing field as them, they would have been fine. But because he had more, they actually didn't want him to have what he had. Yeah, which is why they did what they did. But we see, like, you see jealousy and envious. Envy. I was about to say enviousy.
Yeah.
That's not a word. Envy and coveting, like throughout Genesis, like first book of the Bible. There's multiple with Cain and Abel, and then you've got. Is this just whole concept? Obviously, it's the last of the 10 Commandments, but is this something like? Are we just born with this? Like, is there? And I know we're born with a sinful nature, so maybe that's just is what it is, but. Is there just something in us that we can't get past, that like we're just going to covet things, we're just going to be jealous, and then this is kind of directing us of like, you've got to tame that? Or is this something that kind of develops in our life?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think that we were Adam and Eve were created as satisfied people.
Yeah.
Sin came into the world because they were convinced that they were not satisfied.
Yeah.
And they became dissatisfied people. And I think everybody born from Adam forward is born dissatisfied. Mm-hmm. And even when we get saved, we still have a flesh that's dissatisfied. So there will never be a moment in our lives, as long as we're breathing, that our flesh will be completely satisfied. Mm. So we got to understand that. Like, we got to understand that this is an ongoing battle every single day. I'm not saying that it's a battle we can't win, but it is a battle every single day.
Yeah.
There will always be something that your flesh cries out to you and says, I need something.
Yeah.
I'm not satisfied. That's just our flesh. Now, I can tell you over time, those things change, but it doesn't matter what age you are. It's always something,
Yeah.
Because I can just see it like through life. It's always the stuff that you didn't have that you think you needed. The older you get, it's like the stuff I used to have and I don't have it anymore, man, I not that I do this, but I watch young guys wrestle, and I watch, and you only understand this if you've been in this world, and we can all relate to it in different ways. But like, there's nothing better to me than having worked out for an hour and a half and you're drenching with sweat and you've been going at it and you're like, okay, let's go 20 more minutes.
Yeah.
Like, man, that feeling is, and I don't say that I covet that when I watch it, but it's like I got more memories than I do, you know what I'm saying? Like the ability to do that again, but I just look at that and go, if I could do one thing, you know what I'm saying? Like, man, just to go back and just to get back in that room and just get after it and just not be broken and, but you just go, so I'm just saying that there's always something in your flesh that I think that your flesh is always going to cry out to say, there's something you don't have.
Yeah.
And because think about it. I mean, the enemy attacks our flesh,
Yep.
not our spirit, our flesh. And so that's always going to be a battle. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think, to your question, we're dissatisfied people, dude.
Yep.
And Jesus comes and he satisfies our soul. And so we have a redeemed nature. Think about this, man. And I really picked up on this when we were walking through Romans on Wednesday nights, is that we have been, a part of us has already been resurrected. Mm. Like when we get saved, our soul has already been taken care of. We're resurrected. Our physical part has not been resurrected.
Yeah. But
our spiritual part of us has been resurrected. Dude, we've experienced resurrection. Mm-hmm. And so then why do we, because we still have a flesh that hasn't. So our flesh is still as rotten as it was before we got saved.
Right.
And there's still consequences for these actions.
Absolutely.
We have to be mindful of that. I was thinking yesterday or Sunday as you were preaching, and I wish I'd had time to look up the scripture reference or the story in the Bible. It's an Old Testament story, and I'm sure you can rattle off the specifics, but there was an Assyrian army official. I don't know. He was a leader of some kind, but he had leprosy. Mm-hmm. And so he was directed to Elijah, remember? Mm-hmm. Obviously, there were some delays in him getting there, but when he finally gets to Elijah, he's healed after Elijah tells him to go wash in the Jordan River 7 times, and he does that. Naaman,
the leper.
Thank you. And so,
do you know
Elijah
why?
has the servant.
The reason I remember that.
Why?
It's because the Tallies had a song, Naaman the leper went down. Anyway.
I'm going to trust you.
Jordan 7 times. And he came up shouting. Oh. Anyway.
You're welcome.
Naaman the leper.
There you go. There you go.
But I was thinking of, the servant, Elijah's servant, who was watching this whole thing go down. And Naaman was so grateful to be healed, he offers Elijah a gift.
Right.
And of course, Elijah refuses that. Long story short, the servant just, gives in to his greed,
right?
His covetousness.
Yep.
That's a hard word to say.
Yep.
And takes the gift. So the Lord's punishment for him was an immediate leprosy that was taken from.
That's right.
Naaman.
Yep. And went to his. That's right.
Yeah, it just shows you.
Yep.
How serious God is about sin.
Yep.
And we can't take it lightly.
No.
Yep.
Well, think about it. Lot coveted the green fields.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went and pitched his tent toward Sodom. Mm-hmm. We know what happened to Lot. Achan coveted the loot that God said don't touch at the battle of Ai the battle before that, Jericho. And so, the sin of Achan caused the Israelites to be defeated at the battle of Ai. You can go through the Old Testament and see where coveting, man, just leads to destruction.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about Lot's life, man. Lot was a righteous man. I mean, Lot's in the Hall of Fame, you know. And but just read. I mean, Lot pitched his tent toward Sodom. You know, he coveted after, because Abraham said, we can't stay here together. And so Lot, I'm going to give you the choice of the land. So Lot looked and he coveted. He saw it. And he desired it, and here he goes. And he pitched his tent toward Sodom. Next thing you know, he's inside Sodom. Next thing you know, he's sitting at the city gate, and we know all that happened to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah. Well, it's good stuff. Good way to wrap up the series.
I know. So this coming Sunday, Mike Taylor will be with us.
Yep.
And he's the vice president of GYM. He's a great communicator. Was with us last year and did a super job. Going to be doing some training over the weekend for us.
Yep.
And it's crazy. We're going right into our Christmas series.
Yeah.
The Arrival.
Crazy.
Yeah,
It's already
Arrival,
here.
not the Arrival. Arrival. Okay. Yeah. See, I'm not a
Excited.
communication.
We have our Thanksgiving dinner
Thanksgiving dinner's coming up.
next
It is.
Tuesday.
Yep.
So make sure you sign up for that online, or you can call the church office.
And get your place for that.
Yeah.
Always a great time of fellowship for us on a Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah. That time of year, all the stuff going on.
It is.
So thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.